Warmly welcome to Stockholm and a conversation about this book, Husiatyn The Holocaust Sweden Forgot, is a book that until now has only been published in Swedish, but we're hoping that it might be reaching an English-speaking audience soon. In any case, we'd like to share with you the content of this very important book and some of the teachings, learnings that this book entails for all of us. My name is Lisa Pelling and I am here with two of the authors of this book, Johan Ulvenlöv, welcome, and Matti Palm. Let's start from the beginning. What's the story behind this book and what's it about? Matti?
Yes, it's a book about the Holocaust by bullets in what is today Ukraine, the town of Husiatyn in Galicia, just east of Lviv. And but the book takes its start in with an interrogation by the police of a Swedish waffen-ss volunteer, one of the 200-300 Swedish waffen-ss volunteers that joined the waffen-ss and fought on the German side in the Second World War. So in 1943, at Christmas, he's arrested by the Swedish police in southern Sweden, in Helsingborg, because they think he is spying on the Danish refugees. There were thousands of Danish Jewish refugees mainly in southern Sweden at this time that have fled over the water from Denmark, and because he likes to explain to the police that he is no longer Nazi. By trying to do that, because they know that he was a volunteer, so he said that I can no longer be Nazi because this happened. This massacre in this city in Ukraine called Husiatyn. And he gives details about the massacre and his group that did it, and when it happened, and so forth. So that was the start of the book and our investigation into what really happened. We didn't know, did this small town really exist? Did this massacre exist? Because he was interrogated, he might be lying. We didn't know that when we started to work with the book. But the book is not really about this Swedish SS volunteer, because after some time during the research, we found out ways to tell the story from a different perspective, from two Jewish children that lived in Husiatyn and fled the massacre and survived the massacre. And this was in between the 6th and 11th of July 1941, the massacre. And they fled, and we followed them in the book for a couple of until after the war. They are constantly on the run during the rest of the war until the Soviet army comes in. So the book is really about these children, and one of them, Dov Altschuler, he survives by, for example, they build this bunker in the house in the ghetto where he and his family lives. They dig out 3 meters underground. They pull out a stone in the basement and dig 3 meters down, and there they dig out a room where they can sit, tightly packed, 40 people during these that's called actions by the Germans when they go into the ghetto and take Jews, maybe kill them or take them outside of the town and kill them by some pits or something like that. And the other child, a girl called Sabina Badian, she survives by she knows Ukrainian because her best friend is a Ukrainian girl, so she speaks Ukrainian like it's her language, and so she takes off her shoes because Ukrainian peasant girls they don't have shoes, and she gets by telling people that she's Ukrainian, a Ukrainian peasant girl. So yeah, in that is what the book is about.
Yeah. So you have this record of a police interrogation at the end of 1943 of a waffen-SS volunteer who has witnessed and participated in a massacre in this village in the what today is Ukraine, and then you have two witnesses of survivors of this massacres that you can follow. Johan, can you tell us a little bit more about the kind of sources that you have used? What kind of material, what kind of archives have you been using in order to craft this book?
It's been an immense amount of work for 5 years to write this book. But we have contact with German archives, Czech archives, Israeli archives, U.S. archives, and with the help of United States Holocaust Museum and Memorial, we have been given access to the documents from the Soviet Special Investigation that was conducted at the beginning of 1944, 1945. So basically, it's somewhere
And
around,
Swedish archives.
and Swedish, of course, yeah. Some 30 or 40 archives from all around the world that you could possibly imagine that has any kind of information about Husiatyn and this particular unit, the SS Viking that entered this village. Also, we have looked into proceedings and interrogation in German archives that have been conducted during the 60s and the 70s and all the way to the 80s, actually. But I would say that the most important find that we made was when we scoured the International Tracing Services archive, which is quite recently been uploaded online, where we did a search for Husiatyn to see if there's any persons. We were interested to find persons who lived in Husiatyn during this period, and this is before we found out that Dov Altshuler and Sabina Badian lived there, and we found them. So we searched and we found Dov Altshuler was one of the hits, and we contacted a reporter in Israel that we know, and he helped us to get in touch with Dov Altshuler, who lives today. And that was a big turning point for our book and the writing, and completely shifted the focus. That made it possible to write from their perspective, rather, and making a contrast to this Swedish SS volunteers view of what happened in Husiatyn. So we wanted to get all the details as much as possible, and that was what we were able to do. And it also tells something about the importance of the whole project, because there's someone still alive today. And after we got in touch with Dov and several hours of interviews, which were done mostly online, at least from the start because of the pandemic, which is also a kind of a thing. How do you write this kind of book when there's a pandemic? Perhaps you can argue that you have a lot of time, but still there's it's an obstacle when you cannot travel to meet. But it gives another story if you can meet the person. But it worked fantastically. he is a very energetic man that handles Skype and all these kinds of digital things very good. So that helped, and we can put up this contrast to this Swedish SS soldiers' version of what happened.
I can also say that Dov Eshel, as his name is today, the first time we talked to him, he showed us a map of the city that he said, "Oh, I draw this. I wanted to know how much of the names of our neighbors I remembered," and it was like the whole town. We further built on this map when we visited Husiatyn and so on. It looks about the same today as when he lived there, and but you know, he remembers everything that happened.
It's a small place in what is now Ukraine, a small village. Around 400 Jews were living there at the time. Only a handful were survived. To anyone who has read books about the Holocaust before, who has tried to understand how 6 million Jews could perish, could be murdered, what new piece of information, what new side of the story are you able to tell in this book? Why is it essential reading for anyone who wants to understand better what actually happened?
This is what you could call microhistory. You follow the people. You don't look at the statistics and so on. We also have statistics, but when you look at the scientific papers about this and compare it to what these two kids, what happened to them, you can see that they are very. The only thing that is special about them is that they survived, and for no special reason they just did. Like some few percent of the Jews living there did, and but it describes what happened when the German army and the SS came in 1941 as Germany attacked the Soviet Union as it was then. They kill a lot of Jews on the way east in massacres exactly like the one in Husiatyn. And the next few years they concentrate the Jews in ghettos, and a lot of Jews dies in labor camps, for example. And this is also exactly what happens to these kids, to these children. And the next thing is that in 1943, and in the late spring 1943, these ghettos are starting to be liquidated. They kill all the Jews, and that's exactly what's happening around these children as well, these teenagers as they were like. And then they are on the run, and there's no way to hide. You can, I mean, especially after the harvest, 1943, like in September, when they harvest the rye, and you can't go anywhere. If you have been to this place to this part of Ukraine, you know that you can see for a couple of kilometers that way and that way and that way. There's no way.
Just open fields.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then they're hunted actually. So if you don't get help from someone, you cannot. I mean, you're dead.
So this Holocaust by bullets is maybe different from the picture that most of us would have of the Holocaust, of something that happened in particular places, in concentration camps, behind barbed wire, in an industrial fashion. Here is you describe people killed, sometimes one by one, over not only over days but over months and years, and trying to escape massacre from massacre from massacre, and hiding in ever new places as well. What difference, to return to one of the things that triggered you at the beginning of this research, what difference would it have made if this police interrogation that was made with one Swede, a waffen-ss volunteer, what difference would it have made if someone had taken this police interrogation and said, let's bring this guy to court? Would it have made a difference? He witnessed in December 1943 the massacre that you originally intended to research was in 1941. It had already passed. 2 years had already passed.
Yes,
What's your...
actually, it turned out it could make quite a difference. And when we finished writing the book, we had like 2 questions we wanted to ask. First, to the Swedish prosecutor's office, what should you have done with this information if you had it now, and if this Kurt Lundin, as the SS veteran's name, if he was alive, would he have been questioned in any way? And the answer came quite fast from the prosecutor's office. We wouldn't have done anything because it's, I don't know what's it called, prescription.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't have done anything with this information, and that's quite the same kind of view that Sweden has had to this information for 80 years. They put it in an archive and let it be there and gather dust for 80 years. So we also wanted to hear the German prosecutor's office, Ludwigsburg, to get their view on this interrogation and the facts and the story that we have written down. Sorry. And we got quite fast an answer too. So it was like, please bear with us. We will not speculate into this matter. But we have actually started a preliminary investigation to see if we can pursue this further.
After they read the interrogation that we sent them.
So after 80 years, they said, this is worthwhile, we could open an investigation, and
let's see if we can find someone alive.
Yes. The same conclusion as you draw. You found Dov Altschuler, one of the very, very few surviving victims of this massacre, being still alive, and the conclusions that you draw was maybe some of the persecutors could also be alive at this time.
Yes, I mean, if about 10 persons survived from Husiatyn, 10 Jews survived from Husiatyn, and Dov is still alive, and the SS Viking, the Westland regiment, how many were there? 2,000 maybe?
2,000.
SS soldiers were there. Of course, some of them could be alive.
Some of them could be alive, yes. Of course. Some of them were at that time very, very young.
And we have found people that were alive just a couple of years ago.
Yes.
But no one's still alive.
What difference did it make for Dov when you found him, when you approached him, when you told him about the project? What kind of difference were you able to make for him?
He's quite old. He's 97 years old now. But he's a young 97-year-old person. When we visited there, he took the car and drove us down to the beach. So we could take some good pictures in the sunset, and he always say that, "Oh, you're the reason that I'm still alive. I need to tell this story." So it's a joke, of course, somewhat, but maybe not totally a joke.
You also have been in touch with his relatives, who also have helped you to try find more details, more documents about this. Tell me more about this.
Yeah, quite recently we got in touch with the Polish family that hid Dov and his family. So that was a very interesting and, of course, very, very astonishing, actually, to get in touch and talk with them. So after all these years with archival research, to finally talk to persons that somehow has a part in this story as persons. Both love, of course, but also this the Holibovich family, and also persons that live in Husiatyn today. When we visited Husiatyn, the Ukrainians who has try to cope with the fact that the Holocaust was taking place in the midst of this little town that they live in.
They are trying to gather information and show people what happened. But of course, now during the war, it's difficult for them to do that.
But there are some volunteers who have taken upon them to try translate your book into Ukrainian.
Yes.
Yeah.
So soon we will have a Ukrainian translation.
Yes, yeah. And you're hoping to be able to present a translation into English as well. Is that so?
Yes,
Yes.
we've been working on that for a couple of months now. It's tricky, but I hope that we have an article in place for a Yad Vashem journal later this year. So that's some of the things that we've been working
with some of the content of the book in
Yes.
these chapters,
Yes.
in the article.
Excellent. So we're very much looking forward to that. There will be no legal. This case will not be brought to court, but there will be justice somehow. Anyways, my feeling, Dove has with your story, he has been able to tell his story. He has been able to witness what he was a victim of, and you have made his story and the story of Sabina Badian also very accessible to people. Myself, now that we've talked about the book, everyone knows how it's ending. The two children do survive because they tell their story, but when you read it, it's unimaginable that they would survive. Every turn of the story, I think I must have misread what's on the back page of the book, because it is incredible how they actually managed to survive massacre on massacre, and how they are hunted months and years and still manage to live and tell their stories afterwards.
One could
There is
say, about how it come that just these two persons survive. Dov usually says it's pure luck. And I would add also, of course, and so does he say as well, with the help of a very few, with the help of the Holibovich family,
Yes.
and Sabina Badian survives with the help of a Ukrainian family. So individual choices that persons make in this turmoil that the Holocaust is made difference.
Yes.
And very crucial for them to survive. If you didn't have the help from someone that gave you a little bit of food, a glass of milk, you can sleep here in the barn for 2 nights, you were probably going to end up dead.
I think it's a very powerful message of the book, is how important it is to understand this part of the Holocaust and understand what it looked like and how the mechanisms behind it outside the so-called labor camps, the concentration camps. But there is also a message to our time. There's also a message about how we should treat war criminals. There's a message about the importance to document crimes, to make sure that perpetrators cannot escape from justice. As the saying goes, may you live long and be prosecuted. Would you want to add something to this part of the book? Can other war crimes be researched the way that you have researched this massacre, and other witnesses be brought forward the way that you have helped these people to witness?
It is actually easier now to research the Holocaust than ever before. I mean, we were able to gather several terabytes of data, and we worked with it to index it, to make it searchable on our hard drives. But I mean, if you compare the Second World War to the war in Ukraine today, for example, you will have so much more information. And I would say, I mean, what happened during the Holocaust, that made us be aware in a different way of crimes against humanity and so on. So I also think that it's important for us to remember the Holocaust in detail. I mean, the testimonies of these people in detail, so we really understand it, to be able to uphold the knowledge of how important it is to gather information. Today, if a witness to a war crime in Ukraine comes to Sweden, the police will talk to the person, and the testimony will be taken care of, and the international cooperation will see to it that it will be used if there is an opportunity. That didn't happen with this witness, unfortunately. But I mean, we learned something from that, and we must remember what the lesson was.
And also, I would say something that is very different from now and then is the public awareness is at much greater height, because you can see the atrocities being committed in Ukraine is tracked down by tech people who sit in front of their computers, and they got in hold of, for instance, telephone calls from Russian soldiers talking about what they have done in Bucha or Irpin, and then they can do a completely different kind of tracking by videos they have posted on TikTok or whatever, and this is done by private persons from all around the world who's committed. We had to stick to
journals and
diaries
and letters
from,
and
letters. Same, actually, it's striking how similar the information is in these journals that the German soldiers have and write back home, and they are proud of what they are doing.
And they take photographs of victims,
of the
killings, and they send the film home to their family to develop at home. I mean, so it's, of course, you can compare it, but it's like
easier now.
not a lot of information compared to today.
Yes, and documenting atrocities, documenting crimes like this is always worthwhile. There is always someone who needs the justice of knowing who was the perpetrator, when was the crime committed, who held the gun, who fired, who gave the orders, and there is also often someone to be prosecuted and someone who could be made responsible for the crime that he or she has committed. And I think that's a very powerful message from your book as well, that resonates into our times as well. Anything else that you'd like to add to people who are curious about this book and are not able to read it in Swedish?
If you're interested in the book, please, you're welcome to contact us. If you have any information at all about Husiatyn, please contact us. If you have any information about the SS Westland regiment and the soldiers that were in this regiment, please contact us.
Yes.
And because we still gather information, and hopefully we can come out with an English translation as soon as possible.
Yes, fingers crossed. Let's hope for that.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Johan Ulvenlöv and Matti Palm, for this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.